Hey guys, Mochi here, and today we're going to be doing the Swordcraft Altersphere draft infographic. For the people that are new to this is a relative pick priority chart based on ranking cards in Take 2 from 1 to 7 on just their overall usefulness in your draft deck. The criteria is based on a mix of power level, how strong the card is, its consistency, how well it does its job, its draft slash splashability, which is just how often you want it in your deck, relative strength, which is a strength relative to other cards you can get in the curve. On curve value and scaling is just how well it does on the turn you should play it, and then later on, does it still scale well, and vice versa. So the first card we have up is Soldier's Vow. 5 play point Swordcraft Amulet. It rewards you for playing commanders, and then it tutors officers from the deck. The problem with this card is just the things you can get from the deck. For the most part, you're only going to be getting 4 drops from this. This is the most reliable way to get something in silver. Maybe you'll get something on 3, but those aren't very strong. You want something 5+, and those things come from your rare picks. You got like 5 here, you got 6 here. 7's dead now because of this nerf. And then 8's very inconsistent, and 9 doesn't exist at the moment. So in general, if you can even get away with playing a 5 play point do nothing, you'd still have to draw your cards in the correct order, and then you'd still get mostly minimal payoff, with most cases being silver and bronze cards being fetched from the deck. And it's not even that strong in those cases. For the next pick, we have Marduk, 7 play point 7/7. He locks you out of things on board, which is something that's terrible for Sword. When you play a spell, you can draw cards, so maybe with like treasure tokens, you can get a bunch of draws, but the problem is the cards you draw, for the most part, you can't play them. Sword isn't very spell and amulet focused. Ironically, the amulet part might be very good for them because you can do a lot of chip damage. You have a 7/7 on board, and then you can do maybe 2-4 damage with ramparts and the Age Worn, and you can even like combo it with Grand Auction, discarding something, getting both another draw, and then the amulet for damage. But it's very inconsistent. You can easily lock yourself out of the board and then easily out of the game. So next up, we got Sky Gladiator, 5 play point 5/5, or 5 play point 3/3, and it evolves into a 5/5. It's got the neat can't be attacked text that you see on a lot of Dragoncraft followers, but then when you play officers alongside it, they can't be attacked as well. So overall, it's not very good in the sense that it's very weak. It can die to a lot of removal. You evolve it, and then the opponent just has to play their standard low drop removal, and they should be able to kill it. And you have to bank on it surviving on board. But to be honest, if they can remove it, it's going to stick on board, and then you can try to go to town with a bunch of officers you play, and then just try to dodge AoE, and you should be able to win by going face from there. But it's pretty inconsistent in that sense because it's horrible against AoE, and you can't really reliably gauge how much removal the opponent can possibly have. So next up, we got Jerry. A lot of people call him that. Omen of 1. 6 play point 4/4. Like, if you ignore the conditional, like, obviously he's a great card. You get a premium effect, +2/+2, deal 2 damage, and deal 2 damage to the leader. But the condition is a very hefty price in Take 2, because most of Take 2 you want to take duplicates of really good cards. And then you have to either first pick them, middle pick them, or last pick them. If you first pick them, you run the risk of getting too many duplicates. If you last pick them, you probably haven't been drafting a deck that's all singleton. And for middle pick, sure, there might be some drafts that can make it work, but you're also banking on the rest of your draft not giving you a ton of duplicates, and you also have to have not drafted too many things at the beginning. But overall, if you have a good deck leading up to it, it's possible you can pick them up, especially if you got a premium alongside him, or you want to dodge some stuff on the other side. For the 2-drops, these cards actually benefited a lot from the draft changes. Like, they're all like solid cards on their own respect, other than Daria. Daria might have to go down eventually. But these cards are all solid cards. It's just like they end up being 2s a lot of the time. Like Prim, it stays a 2-drop. It can't really use its ambush very well. Maybe you can like throw down during the evolve turns and then not evolve it and just have it ping for 1 later on. But it's very strong on turn 8. You get the Nanja from her, and then it gets Bane. The 4/6 connects a lot with less Retribution in the format. And yeah, she's overall pretty solid to take. Like, she might be in between here, depending on how it shapes up, because all these cards are still like really good. Dario definitely should come down eventually. We'll see. It's got like weird sort of target untargetability stuff that it really just doesn't do too much. Just 2-1 with a random text that sort of makes immunities happen. Leod's pretty solid. He might come up eventually, depending on what else you don't want to pick or do want to pick. You get the ambush. He actually takes advantage of the Evo since you can evolve, get this Veiled Reckoning. It gets you a 1 damage ping, and then you get the Assassin, so you can put him in ambush again, so you can just have a 3-something that's ambushed and protected to attack again the next turn. So overall, he's pretty solid. I like him around here, maybe eventually. This here, and this can stay, I think. Battlefield Muse, I like the spot she's in right now. She has a really weird evolve criteria because you need to get a 1-drop, right? And this doesn't get buffed. Only these 2 are your viable 1-drops to take, basically. And then the 2-drop shouldn't be a problem. You can still get a neutral though, which is unfortunate, so it doesn't buff that much. And you have to connect with the 2 power. You have to kill something. Living shouldn't be a problem, but you have to kill something and then to make it really work. But you can always drop it like mid to late game and then have something alongside it or alongside a snowball board. But again, the officer clause sort of hurts it quite a bit. Jiraiya, it's your 2-play point. Reduce something to 1-1. It's very late in the game. Like, you have a lot of really good late game options, which Sword already sort of hesitates to take because it wants to end the game early. But like, 9-drops have become better because Swords become slower, or the formats become slower. So like, it might end up here eventually. But again, you have other 9-drops to take. You don't want to take all of them, and you're definitely not picking them for the Accelerate. It's just a bonus tacked on if you throw it out early. I'm gonna cover the neutrals. Oh wait, I already covered Jerry, but I'll cover the other neutrals in a different order, I feel. But I guess I'll start with Fighter anyway. So yeah, just your standard 2-2. He's going to be here for most other crafts as well. Just freebie filler with random keywords that sometimes ends up being relevant. Multi-attack's nice, Bane's nice, and Rush you can get randomly sometimes. Moon and Sun, I'm going to do a video separated on all the choose cards, like what you should choose in general, so I won't go too deep into it. But it's fallen off over the expansions. Like, I feel if Moon and Sun is one of the best cards you can take in your craft, then your craft's probably not that good at the moment. But the infinite value for Sword's case, like, you'd rather just have like really high efficiency tempo cards to take. But it's a fair card to just weave into your curves whenever. Like, it can be like here somewhere. Rapier, it got better with the draft changes. You can sort of take it flexibly now. Before it was sort of like filler-ish, but you can take it as a Bane, a Ward. 4 and 6 are quite good slots for it, and even late game, top deck mode, 8's pretty solid, 5/5 rush. You can kill a lot of things and live and also contest stuff, but during the evolve turns, 4 and 6 are relatively solid. Just having a Bane out and the opponent has to deal with it with removal, or they have to crash something into it. Day's nice. Ambush gives you the novice or the infiltration. Infiltration really isn't used that much. It's mainly the even, which gives you the 0 play point 2/2 that you can evolve and ping, and it also gets storm, which is really nice to contest board, and it also storms face if you need to. The Giant's Bane, Swordsman, destroy something with 6 attack. It's like super conditional, but it's already above stat, right? 5/5, 7/7. That's good enough already to be like a good pick, which is sort of like hovers around here. Like, you can sometimes just want a 5/5 because you have nothing here anymore with the rotation of Castle Guardian. So you can justify taking him up. Blazing Lion Admiral, nerf just happened. I believe it's going to go live on the 15th. He's going to end up here. But surprisingly, I've seen him invocated a lot recently. Like, a lot recently means like 3 games, which is 3 games too many in my opinion. Like, when I first saw him come out, I thought, wow, this card's never going to get invocated into Take 2. You rarely see 15 cards in the... Like, you don't go 15 cards deep in the format, usually. And those 15 cards all have to be followers. Or, like, you know, a combination of token makers and random stuff. But I've seen them invocated quite a bit relative to the Sword matches I've seen. But 4/4 is quite weak. And you have to have even more snowballed board now. Sure, you can have, like, ramparts or, like, token makers, stuff like that. But I feel like it's quite weak now as just a 4/4, because before you could use them like, you know, the fairy card, the fairy rush dude who also buffed your dudes, and you could just rely on having a snowballed board, and he could trade okay as a 4/5, but as a 4/4 he's much weaker. That's the Dragoncraft 5 play point category. So Latham, I feel like constructed people would overrate him, just blanket looking at him, but 1 to 7 he's just Ulfless Knights. And then for the fanfare, you have to actually make use of it. You don't get the consistent boots all the time, and you have to have like in constructed, you'd have a deck not based around him, but you'd have like storms and rushes and tokens, stuff on board that can consistently get you more knights. But it's not uncommon in Take Two that you just have a bunch of random vanilla 2 to 3 to 4 drops that they don't give you enough rush things to proc and give you knights. So you're sort of just, I won't say win more, but because this effect, like if you are neutral on board, you should, or neutral in the game, you should win just off value if all goes right. But it's not like the be all end all like it is if you can keep grinding people out and constructed and the knights can keep chipping in. But it is very strong still when you get off. It's just most of the time it just ends up dead in the hand as an Ulfless Knight. Alright, since I already went through the neutrals and ruined it, I'll just go over Proto. Again, 9 drops have been sort of getting better as the format slowed down. And but Proto is something you don't want in Sword, just off the random chance that for most part you're being aggressive. Still, the 1 damage chip is okay, and if the opponent counter swarms you or gets the board back, 3 should be able to clear everything because they've been investing all their followers into attacking you evenly. So he's still fine, he's still solid. Like, he jumps around from like here to here, right? Based on how defensive your craft is. Like even here for some crafts that really need the effect. So next up we got the dual 1 play point Swordcraft spell. Got nerfed like a while ago for being, I guess, too strong and other stuff. Yeah, you get the queen and you get the black. Both of them are solid cards. You can get the queen or the white one early game to be a 3/3 rush, get you a 1/1. It's really good when you're going first. The Magus is good against blanket removal late game, and then Enhance 8, you get both of them. Recover 8, you can just save it until then if you can, and then you get your turn 8 set up for then, or you can just flexibly put them out. It's not like game-changing, but it's flexible enough and strong enough, and it gives you an insight early game, which is quite good. Celia's nice, 2 play point, 2/2. For the most part, you're trying to save her. Turn 5, it's a pretty explosive play for what Sword can do. You don't have 5 drops anymore. So it gives you an option there. And then the Despairs are a very skillful and a very good way to finish out the game. It's a nice tool for Sword to have. Especially you can afford to draft her more now because of the draft changes. You get more rares and stuff. So you can just take the blanket 2/2 sometimes. And you can afford to play her out. Aether, unfortunately, you can't pull the general anymore. But I guess you can pull Alade on curve. It can evolve very nicely with like a 2-drop or something. Or just anything at all, and then you can skillfully use it to pull some random things based on its +1 pulling effect. So yeah, it's overall a very nice card. Just 2/3 draw 1 card, nice card. I like it at this slot definitely. This card, when it came in, like I was like, oh, it's just the worst Spartacus, and it sort of is. Like this thing is super inconsistent. Like subtract 9, like most of the time you're just pulling a 2 and a 3. You're not getting super lucky and pulling some really big stuff in your deck for the most part. The evolve is like really weird, but it can end up being really good. It's just like you have to get it from the turn 9. Like you're not using a turn 9, right? So you're using a turn 6, and then you're giving your follower a rush, and then you're just converting it into like a blazing breath or something, which isn't like super great, but like it can randomly help you, right? It gets free Evo stats unless I copied this wrong. So it's still fine. Value draws are great in Sword, but it belongs here. Gilneas, this is jumped around. It was here before in my invisible list that no one saw. But Ambush Drain, all great effects, 3/5. It's very hard to interact with now. And the draw you can use to mill people now, sort of. Sometimes you randomly get destroyed by this card, but that's just a random thing you don't really pay attention to. Mainly the +2/+0 is the thing you have to decide if your craft wants it, and Sword definitely wants it. You get it on Ramparts, you get it on this, you get it on all the tokens you make and the aggro plan you have. So it's a very nice card. I just conservatively place it here because maybe your decks are more defensive now. or not defensive. The game might slow down more. People might have more removal for your stuff because of the draft changes. All right, for Prince, I have him by default here. It's not like, oh, he's not like amazing, he shouldn't end up here, because he very well could and might end up here. But you still have to have a safe 1 to 8 to bring him down. Ironically, the crafts I feel that need him the least are the crafts that can put him down the safest. So like Forest Craft, Swordcraft, they're the crafts that want to be most aggressive on board. Blood's a bit weird because it's not very high quality nowadays. But those are the more aggressive crafts, and they want to just have high tempo stuff flood you out on board. They don't need. It's sort of counterintuitive to have just sort of a do nothing follower that comes down, but like it gives you the inevitability, right? So it's still worth considering. Like whenever you just want like a hard win condition, like you just play this down neutral board, like you're golden. So yeah, I like the card. I definitely pick it a lot more than I feel like I should in every craft. But some crafts definitely will appreciate it, like Haven and such, that are more controlling, more to the board. Alright, Octress, it gives you your Prime Artifact hate, your Shadow hate, your everything hate, and it's Evo gives you all your treasures, very nice cards, and then it can even Evo on 4, which is pretty ridiculous, and it gives you the 2 treasures, like 4 and 5, you can combo it with a lot of stuff. And then you can steal last words, that's great, and then the Evo on 8 is just icing on the cake. Flexible cards gets you a lot of value. Even stealing like baby last words, like you could steal Junks and the Dragon Bane card and a bunch of other stuff early on in the game, and that can just win you the game. We got Apostle. This card's like was super important in the mirror match when Sword was the best last expansion, because it lets you clear vanguards and stuff. But like overall in general, just Take Two being so board oriented, it's super important. You can use it turn 6, you can use it 7+ with a bunch of other treasures you get from other cards, and then it just pings everything. Like you can get blades and make it ping for more. You can get the boots and you can rush it in for 4, and then you can ping more stuff. And the ping, it can go face, it can go to another follower. It's just a very solid card, even without any synergies from other treasure cards. Dragonites, again, I'll go over the choose stuff together later. For the most part, you'll take the 2/5 in the mid game, and then late game you'll take a combination of the 4/4 Storm with him, or you'll take the Lancelot and the Percival together to get the combo with them together, the synergy that matters on turn 8. But he's a really Dragonites is a really great card. It gives you a lot of flexibility late game, and it gives you a lot of power. Just a turn 8 explosive play that lets you interact with board and also gives you some face damage. Spartacus, the Reaper card doesn't really matter for the most part. It's mainly just the draw 2, Advent Blader for 6. Solid enough stat line, Evo's good enough. And then you get to get a ton of value, and you have to force your opponent to remove it, or else you're just going to run away with the game value-wise. Zeta, it's not underrated because I have it here, but this card is, I think, low-key the best Swordcraft card you can draft, which would be surprising looking at all these cards. Like, it just does so much. Like, the 6/5, the rush, like, you can... It puts up pressure without evoing, and you get so much value from just having the Beatrix in hand, like being an aggressive tool that can be also removal. And they also have to deal with the Zeta, otherwise it's gonna hit face, or it can generate another one if you trade the Beatrix in. Like it's underappreciated, definitely. Like you can do a lot of things with her, and she's very strong. Sky Fortress, it's sort of overrated, but you can get it on ramparts, you can get it on whatever sticks on board. It's actually not good when you have nothing on board. It's just Sword's so good at keeping stuff on board that you can get the value from the 3/4 buff ward, or you can get the Clash Draw card from Commander. It's just very solid as a 5/6 rush in general. Kills basically a lot of things in the format and lives to tell the tale. And then you have like just an explosive board, and you should be able to run away. Altar Plane, great card. I was considering like swapping the neutral stuff is mostly templated. Like I just slap it on and then move it around from there. Like in general, I feel like it ends up here because like the stats you get from it, depending on what you get, right? There are 2 situations and they're sort of intertwined. Either you get like really small stuff and you get to play it down, and your stat line total is sort of like an Abyss Summoner. Like you get that much stats on board on turn 7. If it's a neutral board, you have big stuff on board and you have small stuff on board. That's really hard to beat if you're on a neutral board. And then if you get big stuff, you set up your turn 8 and onward to be very strong. Like depending on, you can get like janky stuff or gimmicky stuff, but if you do get big stuff, it gets subtracted by 3 Implancers or whatever other basic cards you can get. Like it's very solid regardless of what you get. It's card draw, like pseudo card draw in Swordcraft, which is very important because you might run out of cards with your low curve stuff. All right, no break, but you know I might have to cut this if I mess up or have to get a drink, whatever. But let's keep going. Age 1 weaponry. This card is surprisingly bad, but it's pulled with a surprisingly good card. But we'll get to the good card after. So Age 1 weaponry. It's fair. Like it's just not a good card to draft into your deck. You get knights from it. You get to use it as great sword, great shield. Those cards are sort of not worth cards. The buff is actually solid, but you only get a 1 play point or 1 attack follower off it. But the knights, you can use it as like nightfall or just getting a slow Oathless Knights. It's okay, and it gets a lot better when you get it off Grand Auction, which I'll explain why when I get to Grand Auction. So Savage Swordsman, he has the benefit now of trading with 3/3s, which are sort of in the format now, but obviously the 1 defense hurts a lot. And the rush is actually sort of good, right? 7/5 trades with a lot of things, but turn 8 is quite late, and you don't want to hold it until then. And then it's vulnerable to like a bunch of pings now, zealots and whatnot from Dragon and Blood. So you sort of want to avoid it, but it's like not the end of the world. You can get like 6 chip damage in randomly sometimes, so it can be okay there. Probably the worst not the worst Disciple, maybe, I don't know. But the worst usurpation card is this card. It's Ambush. It needs loot cards to get bigger. If it somehow could become a 2/3 with maybe generating loot on Fanfare, it'd be good. But maybe you can like get a bunch of gildeds from it, but that's like super win more. Like if they can't remove this on a turn after it attacks, like you're already winning the game by a ton. But it's just really weak for its cost. 2/2 ambush. Like you can play on turn 4 as like during the sack turn, and that's like okay. But in general, it's not too great. So you might notice all the 2/3s are here, and these cards are actually really good. So a problem I had with this, or getting this list out, is just the 3s are so strong in Sword, and like just the cards in general. Like all these cards here are very strong. Like in another list or in something else, they might be all like grouped together, but that doesn't really help you in my opinion. So I wanted to sort of separate them and then maybe justify them. Say, oh, maybe sometimes you'll take this over this, or. But overall, I like the order of these so far. But I'll go over each of them separately. So Nanja, just 3 play point, 2/3 ward. Maybe it gets worse because of war dogs. Maybe it doesn't. But the commander thing can be relevant with Tycoon. It's always been randomly. You can cheese out the Bane early game. But it's inconsistent, right? So you're just paying for the 2/3 ward, which is still really good. I mean, you have another 2/3 ward you can pick, but this Evo effect doesn't really benefit you most of the time. And it's just a 3 play point, 2/3 ward, same thing. But you'll want wards in the mid game, late game, because you can protect your threats and you can snowball from there. This card's very interesting. Like the discard can screw you over sometimes. The dream is you get a bunch of tokens or treasure tokens. Maybe you can filter out your useless goblets, and then you can get actual cards from your deck. You can draw some pretty nice cards from the filter effect because it's controlled. You get a random spell and amulet instead of this one where it's just a random card. But again, the discard can screw you over when you're curving out. You just play maybe a 1-drop, even 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop. This might cycle your 4-drop or cycle some late game bomb you're saving. But overall, it's like solid card. I feel like it might be inconsistent enough to warrant actually being here. But like these cards can justifiably be upper. Maybe like Nanja. But Sellsword, it's awkward, right? Because it's a 1 play point card, 1/1. I guess Tina can sometimes filter it out unwantingly. But its effect is solid. It's just really clunky to keep in hand. You're just like, oh, here's my 1-drop. I can always drop this off on curve. Maybe sometimes it's right to just drop it off on curve. But you always sort of want to save it for removal. And then the opponent, because it's the mid-game turns and you're playing Swordcraft, they're playing a lot of like double drop minions and other stuff. Like you never get a giant thing on board until really late in the game. And then you just have I won't say dead card, you just have a situational card stuck in your hand. for most of the time. But he's solid. Like I've never had him up here, even when he's been like super good, quote unquote, because I feel like the arena tempo format during the evolve forms, it's too fast. Like he doesn't get too many good trades, and then you just play like a 1-1 kill something, like 1-1 deal 3 damage for 5, which isn't too amazing. High Seas Warrior, he was actually sort of like really good with like Pitfall and other stuff. Like you can Spine Blade and use him. Just 6x premium stats on Evo, 3-3, bodies a bunch of stuff. He's just super vanilla, but like that's already good enough sometimes just to win the game. Dance, it's sort of a trap, I feel. Like the card is good, right? It would even be even better if it was a Salamander and it could hit face. It generates you your nice treasure tokens, just dodge the bad one, and then you'll have the other ones to work around with. So it's a great card in that respect, the value sense, but the problem is like the craft it's in. Like you'll never want 2. Like 1 I feel like is okay, but like 2 it clunks your hand so much and it just like ruins the game randomly just because you're trying to be aggressive or something, and then you run out of cards, and then you have like 1 or 2 of these stuck in your hand, and the opponent's just trying to get back into the game. They're not like snowballing you randomly because you're playing an aggressive craft for the most part. So then these things rot in your hand, and then when you finally play them, the opponent's, you're just neutralizing the board on both sides for the most part, and then the opponent just plays their stuff again, and then you're out of stuff or you're out of tempo because you played a 5, maybe 6 play point spell to try to clear the board again. I don't know, like 1's nice to have, but I feel like this card's a trap. So it might go down. I don't know, like it's still AoE, it's still appreciated to have. Something else appreciated to have is Vulse, Magical Marksman. Great card, gets you the 1 play point removal and the 5 play point removal. A mistake I see a lot of people making is picking the Holy One when they're like versus Shadow or Portal or something, that they think, oh, I have to get the Prime or I have to get the Mordecai or something, even if like you don't have this. Let's say for the most part they don't have this, but like for the most part you want the Fatal. The Fatal is so good. Like when in doubt, just pick the Fatal. It's so strong when you're curving out. Like up to turn 7, it clears like a ridiculous amount of things during the Evo turns. Most stuff trades into your stuff, and then this, you get a 1 play point, just kill their stuff, and you can just tempo them out from there. It's like ridiculously strong, but definitely in the late game, 8 play point, 2/2, banish anything, get rid of their last words infinite value stuff. Obviously you go for the Holy Pure Bomb, but when you're tempoing out people out, definitely Fatal Spell Bomb for the most part is the way to go. So Aloe Day, 4 play point, 3/3. This card was here in the Invisible List rough draft, and then I played with it a bunch, and it turned out to be very amazing. So the Frostwing Spear actually isn't very good. You sort of run out of followers, in my opinion. You run out of followers too quickly. Like sometimes when you need to weave it out, like your curve demands you to have the Frostwing, you definitely will play it. You can play it as a 6 play point, 5/5 rush. That's a very respectable play. But like as the game goes longer and later game, you definitely, for the most part, you want the Flare Wing because it gives you a 3 damage unconditional, and it gives you chip damage to the enemy face. You can play Evo it or play it and Evo it on 3 or on 4, and then you have a safety net. It's a 5/5, and then you have the 3 damage to clear whatever the big stuff they play after. So the Mad Lance, this card is very solid. I think it's like akin to like Anubis for like Shadowcraft, but like better because like Sword's trying to sort of get on board early, in the mid game. Maybe if they might lose it slightly, maybe they're still contesting board, but like the opponent's not gonna have like a free lane to just dump a bunch of stuff on board. You're still fighting for board in most of your decks. You're not playing like Removal City like other crafts. And like turn 7, this comes down and it clears like everything. They might try to reverse snowball. They might end up with a X2 on board and X2 on board. This thing completely annihilates that. And like it keeps you in the game, right? You have some play point 5/5. That's a very respectable play. And like think back to the 8 play point King, right? He comes down and then evos and then wipes your board because during that stage of the game is when the opponent sort of swings back the board, when Sword might run out of resources or they might decide to be more conservative because they have the king in hand. Same thing with this. Like the opponent might slowly swing back board. You might intentionally let them swing back board, and then you just play this down, and then you might ping 1/1/2 to 1/1 and then 2. That's a ridiculous swing. You killed 3 things, and like they can't really. I won't say they can't play around it, but for the most part, you're just trying to kill their random small stuff and try to efficiently trade up, and this thing just punishes them for doing that. And it does it in such a good way, just ping one, ping one, ping one. I mean, sure, you can hit a bunch of disdain stuff randomly, but for the most part, it doesn't get punished. All right, onward to the bronze picks. Godsent Stride. This card, I don't like it in a sense, but like I've seen it work. Like you can get a bunch of token producers, and it works on that. A very important application I feel is during the early turns, like you can play like a 1/1 and then kill the opponent. Will be like, oh, I can play a 1/3, and then you just play this onto the 1/1, and they have like a small hole to climb out of. You can do it leading up to the evolve turns, like 2/3 trading into 2/3, 3/3, whatever. You can just throw this onto something. Like I feel like the rush, you don't have to use it that much. Just +1 and Bane. If you can line it up on a good turn, like it's a 1-turn Genesis of Legends sort of. But yeah, you can line this up on a good turn. It can be used in a good way. But I just feel like it's unreliable, right? Like you have very good clean removal here. You have removal here as well. That I feel like you don't really need to just. You can definitely take one, but I don't feel like it's strong enough in most cases, like consistent enough. Speaking of consistent stuff, we got Tina. She doesn't really pull that much anymore. You're already sort of hard pressed to take 1-drops in the first place, but like you don't want too many, and you might not want them at all in some drafts. You actually can't pull this, unfortunately. So it's only these two, and these are avoidable in some cases, and sometimes you do want to avoid this. You don't want to pull this for the most part. So she just lost what was it, the 1/1 Bane thing, which you weren't really drafting that much anyway, and also a new 4-drop came into the format, so she can drop down because you have better fours to take. So Quick Blader, just your standard aggro curve card. You want it when you want it, you don't when you don't, and even decks that don't want it, yeah, they'll want it sometimes. Just 1 play point Storm gets you your chip damage early, random damage late, ping Angelic Snipe late game, perfectly fine to take. This thing, you can use it with a lot of random enhances. You can use it with the Bear, use it with the Lucius, and other enhanced stuff that you sometimes get off. It ends up being respectable. It's not bad, not great, but you can make it work definitely, and you can like do aggressive curves with the next card like Opus 9. 1-drop into 2-drop. It's a very hard thing to get rid of, barring like some premium AOE on turn 3 from like Dragon or something. But yeah, something like this is a great aggro curve, and that's a reason why you might want to draft Opus 9. It's a reasonable turn 4 Evo play. You just play this, evolve the thing, 3/3, crash into something, and you get a bunch of split bodies with like another 2-drop on the board. For Tana, 3 play point 3/1, Ambush Bane. Weird combination. Like you can play it during the evolve turns, like make the opponent not be able to evolve into something. It almost guarantees the 3 damage to face now. And you can also like trade into something big, but like it doesn't evolve very well, which is the main issue it has. Like if it was a 1/3, it would probably be a lot better. Like you can the face damage doesn't matter as much early, I feel. You sort of want to be pseudo trading up on stuff, and you have better 3-drops to take in this category as well. So for the Grand Auction, this card started off here. Like, when I first saw the card, I was like, this card's not that great. But this card probably is, like, here, I feel. Like, it's so ridiculously good. It filters away, like, all the junk you get in your draft. You can draw into your premiums. You get to filter away treasure cards when you get them as well, which is really good value. And the weaponry you get, like, from this case is, like, so good. It's almost like draw 2. Like, this thing gives you power, gives you defense, gives you knights at the end of the turn. You can just throw it off turn without any other sword stuff on board, and then that's just very solid. It gives you chip damage, and it gives you basically uninteractable 2 damage, or 2 trading pings. So yeah, it's a great card. I like it a lot. You definitely don't want too many, but like 1 or 2 is like perfectly fine, as long as your curve is ironed out and you have the things you want. Master Samurai, this thing can respectfully go higher now because of the 6-drop discrepancy. You don't have anything here, and like it's a reasonable card, 4/5 double attack. It's never ended up being like too amazing for me. Like you have other 3s to take, like before, but it's solid. Definitely a pick preference kind of thing. I'd respect it here as well, and it might end up here just off the necessity for a 6-drop. White General. I dropped him down because of this card, because he's sort of, I feel like he's better in the general case. You can always get like aggressive first, like when you're going first. If you're super aggressive, you can drop this on a 3-drop and get a lot of chip damage in. And obviously, he's always really good with ramparts and tokens you make. But other than that, it's not very consistent, right? Just 4 play point 3/3. That's nothing you ever want. You'll definitely get enough officers to buff, but just having, I don't know, a 4 play point 3/3 rush on turn 1 or when you're going first, that's like super valuable because you just trade into whatever they play on 3, and then you can just get the treasure, and then they have to remove this. I feel is better because this thing isn't very good at sacking. But he's definitely still a great 4-drop to pick. I mean, you don't have too many options of pure 4-drops to take. Battlefield Beauty, solid card, gives full evo, full stats, 3/4. And the Clash randomly screws over puppets. It doesn't, like, sometimes it can be bad in the sense that, oh, you want to ping the thing you're hitting, like a 5/1 or something. But the Clash can end up being helpful, and you can just treat it as if it's not there if it's not that helpful. Just treat this as a 5/6. Don't try to make this a 6/6. And it's a fair card to take. Does something above average from a Goliath. Officer, regular stats. Yeah, you'll take it when you need a 4. Holy Bear Knight. What a shame, right? Like, he was here before. Like, 2 play point 2/2 ward, get the enhance. Like, Veteran Lancer is already a great card. Protect your sword followers. It's the cheapest way to do so as well. And like the 5/5 is just bonus, right? 4/4 is a perfectly reasonable defensive body when you need to curve out. But like, we have like some really good 2s in the format. Like, even this might be better. But again, it's still really good. And sometimes you'll have the preference and you'll want to take this at a higher rate. It's perfectly reasonable to take this because it's a great card. Magic Dealer, same thing, 2/2. I feel like the discard can hurt you a lot more in this case, because if you're curving out, you just like get a perfect mulligan, and then you have to maybe throw away a 3-drop, throw away a 4-drop. This can actually hurt you. It's much better in the mid to late game where you might have a dead treasure in hand, or you might be able to filter something that you don't want. But still, good 2-drop, has a potentially amazing effect. I covered most of this already. Like, it's really good going first. You can still evolve it, and it puts a lot of pressure for the opponent to get rid of it, and you get 1 treasure for the most part at minimum. Well, you basically get 1 treasure. There's almost no way you don't get 1. Tycoon, basically 7 play point, 5/5, draws you 3 cards. It sort of gets clunky with treasures. It's funny because you generate a lot of treasures, you're outvaluing your opponent, but you need to get rid of them. It's good that your curves are so low now, because you can actually get like really good tycoons off, and like there's really not much punishment. You can just draft like 2 or 3 of these in your bronze curve, and you just beat them from that. You can just draw all your premiums and get to the late game, and that already wins the game. Like, this card can win games on its own, which is why it's so good. Servant, this thing evos like a thief. It Clash gain 1. It's super annoying. Like, it's immune to being killed with puppets, which is a really big important thing for 1 defense followers. And yeah, you can get 1, sometimes you get 2, randomly get 3, but like, it's amazing when it evos, and even when it doesn't, it's still very annoying for the opponent to deal with, because they also have to guess what treasure you get. Spineblade, this thing along with this thing probably carried Swordcraft so hard during the usurpation era. Yeah, 2 play point, 3 damage spell, simple enough. All out of crafts get it, but just getting that 1 treasure is such a big deal. You make the opponent have to guess. You get 1 damage buffs. You get rushes for big stuff. The goblet sometimes helps with the heal, but it's flexible. It lets you use your treasure as well. It's just a really good card, and it's a removal, right? There's nothing here that's like clean removal other than like the vaults you get. So it's really important to pick this up, especially with something like Pitfall gone from the format. Weathered Vanguard, this thing got nerfed, so now it's like 5 power on board and 1/2s. It's worse than before, but it's still really solid. Like, you board flood, board flood, board flood. The opponent clears, they semi-clear, and they keep trying to clear, and then you just play this, and it's a freebie on turn 7. and then they have to clear again, and eventually they might run out of clears, or they're still neutral on board, and then you just play this, and it's very hard to come back from, barring some like random AoE, right? So, but it doesn't trade that well anymore. Like they can just play like 5/7 ward, like the puppet one. Like ironically, like those things can sometimes stonewall Swordcraft. Unlike before when it was just ridiculous, it had 8 power. But it's still really good just by putting multi-bodies on board. It can't be really buffed, but just the bodies on board, free chip damage, free trades, it's pretty solid. War Dog. So, relativistically speaking, I was like, oh, does it belong? No, it belongs here for sure. It's 3.33 on bronze. Like, you can just play this on turn 3, even turn 4. You can evo this on turn 5 alongside a 2-drop. Like, this can just win a game just because of its stat line, right? You kill a 2/3 and then the opponent's down a card. Like, and it, for good measure, has enhance. Enhance 6, deal 3 damage to the enemy leader. That's, like, very respectable. You can just get all your chip damage in early, and just this can randomly win you the game. If you have 2 of these in hand, you spread out your lethal over 2 turns, you're probably going to be in a high life total, so you can just afford to just enhance this down and then enhance another one down. So that can just get you lethals out of nowhere, just having 1 or 2 of these in your deck. Next up is Ramparts, or last up, I suppose. 4 play point Sword Amulet. This card's probably the thing that saved Sword from its bad matchups. It's good against Forest, it's good against Portal, it's good against Shadow, it's good against, like, basically everything. Like, and especially now with Cavalier gone from the format, you need, like, a 4. This thing's super good. You can throw it down, sacrifice it when you're going first. And when you're going first, sometimes it doesn't get you the freebie one, but it doesn't really matter in that case. You're just banking on the heavy knights over the following turns. It falls off later in the game in a sense that, oh, you want to establish the ramparts as early as possible. But, like, it's super, super solid. Like, you can evo at 3/4, which is respectable. And then they're uninteractable. You can't interact with these, and they're goblins for 3 turns. You can use them as pings, you can buff them. Just a ton of things you can do. And, like, the super underrated aspect is you can just go face with them. Just evo 1/2, turn them into Goliaths. That's, like, super hard to deal with. That's 6 damage to the face. It's aggro curve. It's a bunch of stuff. All right, neutral time. We got Lyria. I feel like I don't want to go over all these neutrals, but let's just do it for the first one and see how it goes from there. So Lyria, I underrate this card definitely. With the new neutral changes, you don't see that many 7s anymore. You need to find Gilneas for the constructed level combo, maybe your Armored Troll for something more consistent relative to, like, your picks. But, like, if you don't get this, it's just like a 1/3, a pseudo 1/3. Sure, it can live something like a Valkyrie of Order rushing into it, unlike a 1/3. But, and you can evolve it, but, like, it's not, like, that amazing. Like, yeah, you can evolve it into, like, a 5/3 or something. That's something that's worth noting. It's sort of underrated, but not really, I feel. But I like it here. Investigation, same thing with the other card draw in the format. It's sort of slow. Draw 1's fine. Enhance 6 almost never happens. Like, if you're neutral on board, why aren't you just snowballing it more? But sometimes you do need the value, of course. It's just randomly in hand, and you'll definitely play it. But I feel like this is one of the more below filler picks. So Genesis of Legend, it's definitely strongest in Sword and Forest, sort of. But you get tokens, you get a stuff, but it's sort of unreliable. It's sometimes a bad top deck. But as long as you have the sort of value to keep up with it, it's usually fine. And it's you can definitely make this a good card. I just don't like that it's not reliable at times, and sometimes it can just be a dead card in your deck. Font, again, draw's always fine when you need it. This card's similar to Knight's Way in a sense. End of turn draw card. It doesn't get you the card immediately, and 4 play points is a lot of commitment. You definitely want to play this on, like, sort of an off tempo turn or when you have mana floating, but you're just sort of inviting your opponent back into the game by playing a 4 play point doing nothing. Like, wouldn't, like, a 4 play point just vanilla follower on board? Maybe it would be better, or maybe you want the value. Sometimes you gotta decide. But 1's fine. I think 1's fine in most decks. But I'd begrudgingly pick this usually in general with, like, most card draw. So Armored Troll is an interesting one. 7 play point, 8/7. It's very big. Evolves, ignores wards, and it can only hit the leader. So it can't trade, but this is probably the best craft same thing with Forest. It's probably one of the best cards you can play in, like it's best in these crafts. But like not trading is a very big deal. Maybe you're pushing board enough that the opponent's like struggling to catch up, and you just throw this down. Maybe you can dodge the retribution, and then like maybe it's okay, right? You can get 8 damage, 8/10 damage is a ton. You can just do all your chip damage early, and then you can win off that late. An interesting application I found with this is this thing denies Abyss Summoners really well in Runecraft. Like you play this down, one of the main strengths of Abyss Summoner is they play it down. It's like their optimal turn 7, 8, and 9 play, right? They don't want to be doing anything else if they can afford it. But this thing, it denies it, right? It's a 8 attack, so they can't evolve the Abyss into it. And then the Rush or the Ward doesn't really block it. So it's pretty solid in that respect. You just throw it down if you have it before theirs, and then they sort of are in a tough pickle to get through. But that's just like a minor thing about it. But that's where I've made it work out the most. But it's still not that great through its inability to trade. So Steadfast Angel. I feel like this card in the format makes like Sword worse. Because before you could just throw out 1-drops and just be like, oh, okay, I'm going first. Let's pretend to be an aggro deck. But like this card, it's like, oh, you just made my useless 1-drop good. I'll just throw this down. I mean, sometimes it can be denied. Like they can throw this down and then get the freebie trade. But like getting value off this is sometimes hard. Like 1 play point ward is still like very solid. Like you can do a lot of cool things with it. You can protect something on curve, like turn 6, 5-drop, 1-drop, and you can protect that 5-drop after it evolved. And you can also enhance it for more value when you get a top deck later. So it's like still a solid card to use. And it denies aggro. Like aggro bloods are sometimes scary randomly. Tartman, random Evo that bounces stuff. It's a fun card to use. The 2/2 staying the same is obviously makes sense, but sometimes it sucks. And it doesn't trade very well on Evoing. And it's very, like, if you're very neutral against your opponent, then it's pretty hurtful because you're just giving them back a card in the hand. They have to, like, play, like, something like an Inferno Dragon, like something really big that doesn't really fanfare on board or benefit them on board. And you have to be sort of, or you have to be pushing board quite a bit to make it work. Like something vanilla, they play neutral on board. Speaking of something vanilla and neutral on board, we got Valkyrie of Order. So this card, by I guess my criteria or whatever, well, I guess not by relative strength, but this thing should definitely be higher in a sense. But the 8 is like super rarely used, and like the 5 isn't like super amazing. It's always just felt like the average, the pinnacle of average to me, even though like it's technically above average from the things it gets. Yeah, so just 4/4, 7/7, 2/2. Like it's just mostly vanilla, I feel, even though it has the flexibility to come down. Maybe like the 5 makes it better in Sword nowadays because we need 5-drops. But I still keep it around here. So Barkeep, the Succubus effect, the Succubus effect. This doesn't really happen that much, but like you can still randomly be defensive, right? Because you can always be going second, and the opponent could be getting chip damage in on turn 2. So like it's just a freebie, right? 3.23. 2/3s, like I don't want to say how the mighty have fallen, but like they obviously the 3/3s hurt them quite a bit, and the fact that some crafts like Portal and Sword get them for free is pretty hurtful. But still, same thing. Trade with 2/2s, great card in that sense. This card, 6 play point, 3/2. There are a lot of bad amulets to banish now. You can banish like a Portal one. Like obviously there might be good ones, like the Omen one. But you can banish some bad stuff, right? Banishing a Ramparts is pretty good actually, if you can get it before they get to like the last one. But there's no like canyon in the format now that you say, oh, I must banish. Well, I guess the Shadow one you could call that. But this is more like just a freebie 6-drop that just randomly banishes stuff. You don't take it super high because you're afraid of something like Dragon nowadays. You just take it as a sort of fatty that randomly has banish implications, and you try to make this either work for you or not deny you. Paradise Vanguard is sort of overrated in the sense that sure, you can banish like Tsukuyomis and random stuff in Shadow or something, but like it's just a 2/2 Evo ping. Like it's not like super out of this world. Like it can trade well with tokens, I guess, in Swordcraft, but like I don't feel like it's a super must pick. So this card is a victim of templating. He will definitely be here by mini expansion. Whenever this updates, he will definitely be up there because he is, or she is ridiculously good. Just off this 3 play.31 rush, you can treat that as a pseudo removal. That's perfectly fine. If the opponents are wiping your board consistently, you can kill something like a 5/3, whatever, and then you can evo this 7/5. It fits Sword's plan super well. Just 2-drop, 3-drop, and then this thing's super large on board. The opponent has to deal with it, and then this thing hopefully lives and then does more chip damage. So yeah, this thing will definitely go up. For most crafts, it should end up here, and then for Sword, it will definitely end up here. Seraphic Blade, 2 play point. This card, you see a lot in Constructed. Kill Viras, kill whatever's. But it's not like super amazing in Take 2. This thing is super situational. 2 play points. You can kill the Evo thing, like, in general, but if it can rot in hand in like the mid game turns, which is super important. And hand 6 is actually really expensive. It's like your entire turn, and then you're just sort of, I won't say on the back foot, but you just like neutralize the game again, which is something Sword doesn't really want. You want stuff that pushes for board later, but like it obviously gets better later in the game. But I feel like Sword doesn't want this effect. A lot of crafts definitely have better removal in their slots, and even in neutral there are better removals if you just want it for the hard removal. But it sometimes ends up being flexible enough. But I feel like this spot's perfectly fine for Blade to be in. So Chaos got better because 3/3s are in the format now, but the rush ward is also a bonus. You can just treat this as what is it, the mercenary drifter or something. Like ward rush, you always get the wrong one. Maybe it's just me, but you never rely on it. You just say, oh, what happens if I get ward? What happens if I get rush? You always say hopefully it denies like something that's 3 attack on board. So the Angel, this thing's solid. It's super good in Dragoncraft because of the stain stuff. But it's great in Sword too. It's Admiral. It has like basically the same implications as it. 6 play point, 4/4, and then you put it on one of your tokens. You're probably the most likely to have something live for it. Maybe this will bump up. Maybe this will switch with this after. But Accelerate's always fine. It ends up being, what is that card? The 2/2 Forged Armory. Like that ends up being fine sometimes. You can buff a token and you can get it on a 2/2. Maybe you can get it on this. That's very solid. But yeah, this is fine, and this is still really good. You can get it on a Rampart. Sword has the most likely stuff to live, so maybe it'll end up being higher for Sword. But I like the spot overall in general for neutrals. Fount sort of got a bump from my invisible list from before. It's especially in like Sword, it's like super good in Sword. It gives you the draw which you want, and you can weave it into your curve easier than a lot of other crafts because your curve's so low. And then you get tokens to trade up, you get a bunch of stuff to trade up, or you even get face damage, which is important. So Goblin Fighter, yeah, it eases up your curve, even though it's a 2/1, randomly dies to puppets, tokens, fairies, whatever. But getting the Goblin's great for curving out. You can just drop it alongside 2 drops, 3 drops. It makes your opponent's life difficult to like remove everything. And Goblin Lander is obviously very solid. It gives you your makeshift Cavalier on turn 4 on Evo, and obviously you can just throw it out on turn 4. Just have it just make a 2/3 1/2, which is always very good, and you got all this for just 1 card, so that's great. Raise, this thing might go down eventually, but I like it. It's a 4 play point. You can just throw it down and sack it when you're going first. Sometimes you don't want to like push the board too much because the opponents might have a lot of premium Evos. They could have like Shadow can have the Sarcophagus that just wipes your board and you lose from there if you play too aggressively. So you might just want to throw something like this out. It still does 2 damage, same thing as like a 3/4 almost, and then you can Evo back on them, and it keeps you up on it reverses the card advantage from going first, which is something I really like. So Kaiza, like he was originally like here, but he sort of like fell off, not because like, oh, he's a 2/3, but like you have to Evo to fully get the effects. It's like an Evo ping like this. Like he's only obviously good when he's Evoing, and most of the time he's forced to Evo on turn 4-5. Like it's very hard to Evo him in the later turns, I feel. And then the draw's still great, the ping's still great. You can hold them, which is always great. But I feel like he's borderline in between these two, if that's a place. So Craving Splendor, it's just a habit of keeping just the removals here. It's still a really great card. Gives you less lethals here because your cards are so small, but still you can randomly get the 4 damage lethal, but mainly just for the 3 play point deal 4 or something, which is still really solid. And it doesn't have the weakness this has, which I'll get to after. High Enchantress, same thing with this card, except for better stats. It draws you a card. This card's really good in Sword in general because you can obviously buff tokens, buff small stuff. You have likely stuff to stay on board. So it's still fine. Great card in Sword because 4/3 and aggressively statted and gives you aggressive card. So Craving, so it's like 5/4 Hector ping in a sense. Give a thing +3/+0. But the main problem is this card's in the format. So this card being in the format means this card can never like cleanly kill something. You can always hit a 2-drop and the opponent can just evo it, do some random stuff, and then OTK you out of nowhere. And it's not like you want to trade into something twice. Like you want to put the fanfare onto something and then you trade with them later. That's like super inefficient and you're not making the most of this faller. So it's always inherently risky to play, which is what I'm getting at. But like otherwise it's like an amazing card, which I'm actually glad it's in the format because, you know, it gives you some risk reward, some random stuff. It's not just like free vanilla ping 3 value, which is what I really like about this card. And obviously you can use it on yourself and then get the buff. Same thing with Splendor. So Catalina, it's been here and here throughout the formats. I like it a lot. It's really good in Sword. You curve out very well. It's best when it's not evolving, which is funny on like something like Gigas, because when it's not evolving, like when it evolves, it becomes a 6/3 for the most part, and then the opponent can just trade into it after. There's no real difference. But when it doesn't evolve, 4/4 ward, and then it soaks up 3, and then soaks up something else. Especially when the opponent's like struggling to get back on board, you just play this. You have a snowballed board. It protects it from basically 2 things. So the opponent has to commit maybe, unless they're like Portalcraft, which might have puppets. Like, for the most part, they have to commit, like, actual real cards to trading into the Catalina. Probably at least 2 cards, and then you still have a snowball board to go from there. Reina, same thing with this card and this card. Sword's probably the most likely to... Well, there are a lot of things, right? Like, Haven's got, like, amulets that might pop up. Portalcraft, you can use it on puppets. But this card is sort of tentative. Like, I think it'll end up here in the end. Maybe this will be higher in Swords. But this thing has been overall pretty good. It has like Abyss Summoner stats. It's got the awkwardness of, oh, if you have Evos on turn 7, you sort of want to Evo this, but then you play this on something that's already on board, and then you're like, oh, I have to use this because you're trying to be efficient, and then the thing on board, maybe it doesn't live a trade, maybe it trades inefficiently, something like that. So it's like sort of clunky awkwardness, but like it's definitely good, and you can also always use it like a super late game, like this into like this, like anything that's 2 and 3, which, you know, Sword definitely has the most of. You can definitely get some really premium power plays going. So onto the premiums, we got Loane, definitely really solid. Increase your win rate by probably like 10% when you play it. Nets you your 3 cards, the other 2 bro families, and also the big one. Just really great cards to have in Sword. The Storm's great, the 1/3 is great, and then the heal / AoE increase your attack power is great. Yep, not much to say about there. Maybe he gets worse because of the 2/2, but like he's always been fine. Like just because it's a 2/2 draw cards, which is always great. Oceanus, Raindrop, maybe you'll be a budget Rakam, but for the most part you're picking the Water Spout. It's a great card. You can play it on turn 7, get sort of a Dread Dragon effect going. Ping off a bunch of stuff. It's also really safe when it's evolving. You get 5/6 hidden, and then you have the Water Spout in hand, and then you can just remove basically whatever clears it. I've had a sort of inner monologue or discussion with myself. Oh, which one of these would I rather pick? I think I would go with Oceanus for most cases. But most of the 4-drops here are like super good. Recam deal 3 on when it pseudo clashes, and then it stays a 5/5 for most parts. It's still really solid, especially like against something like Sword, which has like really awkward ways to clear it. Like maybe I'll clear it with, if I'm playing Sword, maybe I'll have to like Evo one of these, and then it's super inefficient. And like it's one of its big weaknesses, Pitfall is like gone, because normally you'd be like, oh, I'll like play a 2-drop in Pitfall, and then my tempo game's still going on, but now it's like gone, so it might have free reign over a bunch of stuff. So it's still really solid. And Altea is gone, so there's like no competition where you don't want to like overclog with these slots, or maybe a craft is saying, oh, maybe I have too many things I want to Evo, and it sort of gets worse as the game goes on. But yeah, it's still like really solid. Great card to pick up. Fina, you get the base like fanfare deal 1 for play point 3/3. That's like Bear Puppeteer, the portal card, and it's like super solid. You can ping the enemy too, and like the Evo can randomly deny like sword stuff. It can deny forest stuff, skeletons. Just it randomly sometimes ends up being like super lethal, and it's a freebie. It doesn't lose stats on Evo, so it's like really solid, really good pickup. I've had it floating around here, but then like you have like different fours to compete with, especially around your craft, and like your neutral picks are like super premium now with like less of them in the format. So just picking just good neutrals I feel is important, so that's why it's back up here. Lyriel, speaking of good neutrals, we got, oh no, I forgot to copy paste the other thing, but it has the Evo ping, at least it should, as far as I know. So it Evos onto 5, and then it has a ping 2 on its attached to its Evo, and then it's got a random freebie that it puts a bubble over your entire team with like random effects that sometimes deal 0, and sometimes they still clear. But yeah, it's just really good. Dragon Warrior with upside. Sure, it's 5/5. Like 5/5 is obviously upside, but sometimes the 2 isn't enough. But for most cases, the 2 will be enough, and it's like really solid. You trade into the 3-drop, ping the 2-drop. It's good enough. All right, we're nearing the end, so I'm pretty glad. Divine Retribution, 5 play point. Oh, I think I'm missing something too. Yep. 5 play point neutral spell. You kill something, and then if you enhance it, and this is the wrong one. Okay. That's unfortunate. Okay, so I probably just copied the Lyriel over twice. So yeah, 5 play point neutral spell. You 5 play point kill something or enhance 8, and then it kills that thing, and then it deals 3. The important thing is it's non-targeting, so you can kill like Gilneases with it and just random stuff hiding behind wards that you can't clear, and it kills the strongest thing on board. So like sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse, and it allows for some really cool counterplay, which you can like have a 3 attack thing you're trying to protect, and maybe you Evo a 2-drop to make it a 4, and then you play around the divine. So it's got a lot of nice stuff. The 3 damage is super important for sword. Like Dance of Death was like a blessing, right? And it was like super good, but this thing sometimes does things better, and sometimes it does things worse. But it's a great card to have in the format, and I'll miss it when it goes. But yeah, it ends up here for basically all crafts. The new one, Slash of 1, I'm not sure where it'll end up, but it's tentatively here just because it has this line of text: destroy an enemy follower amulet. That's already premium enough. The amulet sometimes doesn't really matter. Like even something like the crow amulet, obviously you have to destroy it, but they already get a ton of value off it. But the follower destruction is just premium for crafts that don't have it and that want it. And you get a random discount that sometimes makes it a pitfall on Evo. So I think that about wraps it up. I hope I haven't rambled too much, and I hope this doesn't end up being too long for editing and stuff, but hopefully you guys all enjoyed. Any feedback you give is good, and what your thoughts are or what your wishes are for the following infographics, and I guess I'll see you guys next video.